Hello and welcome to RealRock.
Where your hosts from Climb Scotland, Robert Mackenzie,
And me, Cal McBain, catch up with climbers every 2 weeks who have different epic tales to tell us.
we hope you enjoy the show.
And remember, when you're out climbing, be safe and do your buddy checks.
Welcome back to RealRock, and this is part 2 with Kevin Howett's Journey Through the Ages. Let's dive right in.
So now we're getting on to the more climbing side. Yeah. The more climbing side of the organisation, I think we'll start off, you were heavily involved in the facility development side. We'll kick off with that. So give us a kind of rundown of some of the projects that you were involved in on the facility development side. Because you came on scene with us round about the time where the first climbing walls were starting to open, and then you've been kind of involved in some way in pretty much all of them since.
Yeah, most of them. I've had some influence on them.
Yeah.
When I was living over in the West, before I became a bureaucrat, Egg Grindley who was a teacher at Fort William High School and did tons of new routes in the area, Glen Nevis and stuff. So I knew Ed really well when we lived there, climbing. And, he wanted somewhere to climb, a climb wall. So he built a climbing wall in the water tower at the school.
Really?
Yeah.
Like inside it?
Well, it was in a large pot. I think it was underneath where the water was.
Right.
But you had to go up some step ladders to get into it. And it was in this school. And sort of Cubby, Gary and a few of the other Glen Nevis cruisers that we called ourselves at the time.
The Glen Nevis cruisers. Oh my God.
1980s, hell. All wearing lycra. It's dreadful. So we'd go up there and train. It was basically just a square brick wall with a hole in the floor. And we just shaped out holes and traversed. It was all on tiny wee crimps. I think Cubby could go round and round that thing doing 6C crimpy holes for about 2 hours or something. Unbelievable.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, clearly that wasn't going to last very long because it was all illegal. So I don't think anybody in the school knew Ed was doing this. And it was always after school that we went there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so while we were there, the wall got built in the Fort Williams Leisure Centre.
Yeah.
And I think it was done by Bendercrete, which is this sort of fake.
Oh, I remember
wall.
Bendercrete
Yeah.
well.
Made to look real. Ish, yeah. Anyway, the main thing about it was there was virtually no holes on it. So it was really hard to climb on it, even with some bolt-ons here and there. But the main feature was this off-width crack up to a roof, through the roof, and got wider and wider until it was about this wide to the top. And I think it was Ed who wanted that because he quite liked off-width. Nobody could climb it. I certainly couldn't. So that was my introduction to the design of climbing walls, right? Before I even started with Mountaineering Scotland.
It all started with a Bendercrete wall.
Yeah.
Christ.
So when I became involved in that, then the first one I guess that we had some involvement with was the little bouldering wall at the Kelvin Hall in Glasgow, which was actually a little bit too high, considering it had these movable mats underneath it, and it was a disaster waiting to happen, to be honest, safety wise. I tried to explain the situation but they didn't want to know.
Yeah.
The Beach Leisure Centre in Aberdeen.
Oh yeah.
That got built around about the same time. Again, there was a section in the middle was totally homeless, so it was utterly pointless. Plus, I got called into that one by the Leisure Centre to look at the how they could make it safer.
Yeah.
Because basically, people would slip, go down the wall, and it had a skirting board along the bottom.
Yeah.
And they'd hit it with their feet and break their ankle. Plus, it was open to the swimming pool, so it got really, really sweaty and hot. So you could easily pop off.
Yeah.
And chalk was rubbish because it just went pasty.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Grim.
Anyway, I think it closed. Whatever. There was nothing I could do. I told them to take the board off the bottom and put matting down, which they did do. And the Etchican Club raised a load of money to have some holes put in the blank bit, so you could actually climb it.
Nice.
So that was the first couple of ones, and then the really main one that I got involved in was Inverness.
Yeah.
Really? Which is your hometown.
My home wall.
Yeah, where you grew up and learned to be the best climber in the world.
Oh, I don't brag about it much. Yeah, that was another Ben Creek classic as well.
Yeah. So that took a long time to come to fruition. The local club were involved. The people at the council obviously involved in it, and the leisure centre, and a range of different local climbers. And that was the first one we had a big opening for, because we were involved in, and your dad was involved at that point. He'd come in as main instructor, I think. Yeah. And at the time we had a policy I wrote a policy because we needed something to hang things by. So if somebody was going to build a climbing wall, say, well, this is what we're after. And at the time we thought it was important to be able to have the whole range of different things. So bouldering, roped, sport, and trad.
Yeah, because that was a great idea.
Yeah. So they just started making trad routes down in England. So we thought, well, they're going to be doing it down there. Let's have a go here. So we got 2 lines of trad routes. And there were slots, basically, V slots, that you put your gear in. So on the opening ceremony, what we're going to do is your dad was belaying me. And we had various different people climbing. And there was a guy doing a commentary about it all. And I would do the route and take a massive whipper off the top on the gear, right? Only your dad put quite a lot of rope out.
Yes. He was good at doing that, though, wasn't he?
So I went for miles. And there was an audible from everybody watching. And then I lowered to the deck, and that was it. It was like, oh. And the guy didn't even talk about the fact that I'd fallen under gear, placed myself. It had completely gone by the by. Oh, dear.
Oh, brilliant. Those gear placements were like one of the stupidest things. I understand what the thought process was, but actually in reality, man, they were so bad.
Yeah,
they were so bad. Yeah. They never got used.
I know. They put bolts in them in the end, didn't they?
No.
Oh, they're still
there. Still, yeah, they're just top rope only lines now because no one could lead them. No, they never got bolted.
Dear.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so, that was the first one. But yeah, I mean, I suppose if you look at the big ones, because the smaller ones that are self-financing, I didn't really get involved with very much because they didn't need to talk to us. So Alien Rock and Glasgow Climbing Centre, they were just a bunch of climbers who had money and they just went ahead and built them, so that's fine.
They were open before Inverness Leisure, were they not?
Yeah,
they were.
Yeah. They which one was first?
Alien was first.
Alien came first, and then Glasgow. Yeah. Brilliant. And they didn't need us to help them get any grants or anything. They had their own financial security for it. So, but we then had a really good association with them. Well, at least at Glasgow. It was soured a little bit later on for Alien because of Rathel, but come on to that. But essentially, we needed something, to say to Sport Scotland, who has facilities funding, and they could give up quite a lot of money to help establish some of these sports centres. So I rewrote the whole policy and the strategy, which has only just now been revamped, just this year. And the idea was to have a network of walls at different sizes in each regional area, leading to a series of hubs and different sizes that could cater for different comps and different things, and then a national or international centre.
Yeah.
And that's where Ratho started up. So I doubt if many people actually know the story of Ratho, how it started.
I mean, Doug McCallum definitely told us some details about it in his episode.
Ah, right, yeah.
So we've got some details, but I don't think he went into great detail about kind of our involvement or your involvement, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, we had this policy that had been accepted by Sports Scotland, well, Scottish Sports Council then, and we just needed to see if we could get the money and get somebody to be able to build this thing.
Yeah.
Duncan and Rab Anderson, came to me, had a meeting with us and said, we'd love to be able to produce something really spectacular in Scotland as a national centre. So yeah, that's it's in our policy. Yes, we want it. We really do. We'll help you any way we can. Had a meeting with Sports Scotland, and Duncan and Rab came along, and Sports Scotland was saying, yeah, okay, but there isn't an awful lot of money available at the minute, so it may be some time.
Yeah.
Then out the blue, I got a phone call, I think it was, from a guy who was a builder.
Yeah.
Had a massive building firm all over the world, I think. I mean,
he was an architect.
Well, he was the architect, yeah, that's right, yeah. But his firm, what was it called again? Anyway, they were building stuff all over the world and out in the Middle East and Far East and stuff. And he was a mountaineer, and he said he made a lot of money, and he wanted to put something back into Scottish mountaineering, into the community, and he was interested in trying to produce something really big. I thought, I know who you need to speak to. So I got them in touch with each other and then left them to it.
Yeah.
I remember them contacting me and saying we found a venue on the south side of Edinburgh, actually, not far away from where Eden Rock is at the minute, I think. And it was an old pit, and it's full of slag heaps and stuff, but it had a big building, and they were looking at that. Meantime, I was dealing with access problems at Ratho Quarry. So the owners of Ratho Wimpy were utterly pissed off with climbers breaking through the fence and going climbing. And they'd mend the fence and then everybody break it again or abseil off the top and go climbing. And I had the CEO of Wimpy ring me up once, absolutely complaining like hell about the climbers. And I said, look, sorry, but, I've got no control over people.
Yeah.
If you want to do them for trespass, I can't stop you. But it's just going to keep on going. And he was just so annoyed with them. Anyway, that wasn't resolved. There was nothing I could do. And we would say to climbers, well, it's up to you. You've got a chance of being done for trespass, but I doubt it. It's probably not going to happen. And then I get a phone call from the guys saying, can we have a meet? We think we've got a venue. I think we met in a golf club to the west of Glasgow, Edinburgh somewhere. Can't remember where it was. Very posh. Anyway, met up and said, right, we don't know how you feel about this, but we've bought a quarry. And we want to put a roof over it. Would you support it? And I just thought, I know where that is. Yeah, so the Wimpy guy, basically, I think had just been so pissed off with climbers.
Just like, buy it.
That I think when David Taylor was the guy from the company. I don't know who approached who, whatever. I knew back then, but I've forgotten. And that was it. We said, we'll support it. And then we were involved in a lot of the design work for the wall only. I mean, the rest of the building was up to them. But David wanted to produce something that was world standard and a venue to come, which I think he produced.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
incredible. And I mean, been involved with it ever since, really, right through everything. And when it all went a bit wrong, and which was nothing to do with Duncan, and Rab, I blame the bank. Actually, the banking sector are just appalling. They agreed to loan millions of pounds and then reneged on it. In my mind, I think they're the ones to blame. But anyway, we didn't. It was going to be sold off as a casino. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. The receivers were approached by, I think it was an American casino company, and they were going to turn the whole place into a casino.
Wow. They're going to tear the walls down and turn it into a casino? That's crazy.
I never saw the full details.
That's mad.
But with Fred Belcher, who was vice president at the time, and John Mackenzie was president. And John Mackenzie was actually kind of on the board originally with Ratho. We lobbied like hell to actually get it to save it, and got Edinburgh City Council to buy it. Yeah. And then Edinburgh Leisure ran it.
What other big facilities kind of needed our support then? Like you said, the smaller facilities that kind of self-fund themselves, like Orkney, I think self-funded themselves. They didn't require funding from us. Allopole the same, Gairloch are the same. Three Wise Monkeys will be the same. Yeah. But what other facilities kind of came to us and required our support that you were involved in there?
Transition Extreme, I suppose, was the next big one. Yeah. TX. They needed a fair amount of money to get it established. But that TX, the plan for TX came after an even bigger plan. I think it was called Granite Rock. So that was a big proposal for a new build on the west side of Aberdeen. Yeah. And it was put together by some of the leading climbers in the Aberdeen area. All big names that everybody knows. And they sank a lot of money into it personally. We supported it. It was going to be like I suppose the equivalent to a level 2 hub that we'd call it that now. Yeah. It would have loads of bouldering, masses of walls, and we managed to get funding from the sports lottery for it. They were just shy of raising the rest of the capital, because you don't get all the money from the lottery. Yeah. You've got to actually get the majority from other means. But when you get accepted for the lottery grant, you've got a year to start building work, even if it's just digging a hole at the start of it to say, right, this is it, we're building. You've got to do that, and they missed it, and unfortunately, it didn't go ahead. I thought, I've got all the plans and everything are still in the office, and I occasionally look at them because I think they're amazing. Yeah. It was a very, very good project. And it's just a pity that it didn't quite manage to get the funding. And then the next one came through, TX. And again, Sport Scotland saw that it was still in the policy and the strategy. We needed one. So they were able to give it a grant funding.
So, I mean, you weren't just involved in the kind of policy side and the facility strategy side. You helped with facility strategy stuff, but getting funding for people, hunting funding, policy sides, but also the design side of quite a lot of walls as well. Yeah. So, you've had a hand in a lot of areas within facility development.
Yeah, I mean, it was advice we'd give. I mean, it wasn't like, you've got to do it this way. Yeah. We definitely want this, we want that. It was more like, well, this is a strategy, here's the policy, what we were working to. We really would like to be able to run such and such competition at your venue. Yeah. And to do that, we need this. Yeah. We'd like to do coaching. And and we're coaching fundamentals 1, you need a slab. If it's too steep, you can't do fundamentals 1, and if it's too easy, you can't do fundamentals 1. So it's got to be the right angle.
Yeah.
And for a while, nobody wanted to put slabs in, you know.
Yeah.
And more recently, we're talking about coaching and physical training. So we required the stuff for that, the more physical training specific gear that you needed at a wall. And I think most of the walls would work with us. And I know that, for instance, one of the other ones I've been working with was Above Adventure in Kilmarnock. And that was Entreprise, was their favoured manufacturer. And the guys at Entreprise I've been working with quite a bit on and off, and they're brilliant. And one of them came to me once and said, wish the BMC had a strategy like you've got. Because down in England, it's a free-for-all. There's no strategy, nothing. He says, I see your strategy. I look at what you need. You pinpoint, the key elements that you need in the wall. I can design it. And it saves a hell of a lot of time. And I know, doing it like that, you're going to support it, and they're going to get the money to build it. And that's how we worked it, really. Yeah. So, Above Adventure, I'm quite pleased with.
I mean, I think all the walls that you've been involved in they're awesome assets for the country and for the climbing community. Like, they are all fantastic facilities in their own special way. I think, I think they've all got little things that's like, oh, that could have been done differently or whatever. But like, on the whole, I think they're all brilliantly balanced, really good facilities.
Good. Yeah. I mean, you're hand-tied by finances and what's available. Yeah. To do a new build for a climbing wall, it's millions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say in the last 15, maybe it's more years, there's not been that much money around, to be able to do this.
Like, every single facility is accessible and, I'm going to use the word appropriate for everyone that accesses them. Like all of the walls, if you're a hardcore, hard climber, you can go to all of the walls and there's always something for you there. If you're grassroots getting into it for the first time, there's always something at every wall to go to. Yeah. There's no walls that have totally missed the mark for a certain group of people. And I think that's a legacy to be very happy with.
Yeah, I'm pleased with what we've done, considering the constraints we had.
Yeah.
I mean, there were, when the bouldering thing took off and you had TCA come and look at their first wall in Glasgow, they approached us and said, this is what we're thinking of doing. And it wasn't, a bouldering only concept wasn't in our strategy at all. So they didn't ask for money. I think they asked for our support, which we would give a letter of support if it fitted, and they could use that wherever. But they didn't go to the facility strategy. And the same with Eden Rock, But we had to change the strategy because of this whole sort of diversification of climbing, and the climbing walls had to be catered for. So we do have a new strategy, which is probably going to work better in the future for that kind of thing. But we're still missing gaps, There's still things. I mean, it's great we've got the ledge, which has been the last one I've been involved with, up in Inverness. And that's working in Duncan again. How many years?
Yeah,
since we worked with him back in the day, with Ratho. And what's produced is pretty good. I like it. I think it's really good venue.
It's excellent.
Yeah. And again, limited by what was available. I mean, their original concept was a completely new build. It was a much bigger project, cost more. But constraints, problems with finances, the general economy going down, and it looked like we were going to lose it. And luckily they managed to find somewhere that I could still look at it, because there's no doubt Sports Scotland, who'd agreed to give the money, a sizable grant for it. We're looking at it each time it changed, because it changed 3 times. We're like, right, Sports, Mountaineering Scotland, what do you think of this? Does it still fit your strategy? And I had to be really careful, because if it didn't, and I said yes, they would know.
Yeah.
You know, and that would scupper any confidence they had in what we were saying.
Yeah.
And
that would then have an impact on future facilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but it did. I mean, I convinced them that actually, I'm being pragmatic, we're not going to get this full bells and whistles thing that was originally envisaged with loads of ropes, really high, you know, a level 3 hub in boulder and roped, and a huge area for training. We have to be realistic.
But realistic, but what has been pulled off is excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Yeah.
And a good team, I think.
Really good team.
Yeah.
So yeah, now we're talking a little bit more about the climbing side. Let's start with the mountaineering. What was it? The coordination group. Who chose that name? But yeah, this group sounded like an absolute riot. This sounded mental. So what's the story there?
Yeah. Okay. So it goes back a long way, actually. It's to do with the association between our national governing body, Mountaineering Council of Scotland, then, and the BMC, and later on Ireland as well, MI. When I first started, volunteers would go down and be representing Mountaineering Council of Scotland down at the BMC National Council or whatever. It was Sandy Cousins, actually, who is an absolute stalwart. He's one of the guys who set up the MCFS back in the day, and he did everything. He was like a volunteer version of me. I mean, he spent his life doing it. He was a larger-than-life character, an absolutely amazing guy. He would come to executive committee meetings, smoking a pipe, which quite a lot of people didn't like, with his dog, and he'd be wearing a kilt. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And he would ignore anybody complaining. You know, I quite liked him. Anyway, so he would do it. But anyway, when I came on board, I was asked to go down and represent MCFS.
Yeah.
How can I phrase this? For the first few years when I was going down to the National Council, I got the impression members of the BMC National Council at the time seemed to have a pretty dim view of Mountaineering Council of Scotland. It was just some of there's an attitude and the way the comments they make, which made me think, hang on a minute, you know, I'm English, although I don't like being called English because I'm not even a Geordie, by the way. I'm a Northumbrian Halfwit. Okay. That's what I've been told I am. Which is neither English nor Scottish.
Northumbrian Halfwit. I like it. Yeah. I like it. It suits you.
So I realised actually we weren't really getting anywhere. The sort of the relationship was poor. They're meant to represent us to the International Federation, the UIA, at the time. We never had any say in any of it. We never got reports back. The BMC would put out press releases about Scottish hill walking and mountaineering in Scotland in the winter. Why? They had no remit in Scotland. There'd been a general, I think, gentleman's agreement that they would represent us internationally and do things in England and Wales, and we would do in Scotland. But they constantly broke that. So I got sick of this, and I wrote a memorandum of agreement, drafted it up, put it to our committee. They agreed, changed a few things, sent it down, and it was agreed. Yeah. And that memorandum stated very clearly in writing our respective roles. So we knew about it. All of our committee, as it changed, all knew about it. Yeah. But I think once it was done at the BNC, nobody knew coming in or ever told about it.
Right.
So if somebody, for instance, as a stupid little example, but it's indicative. If somebody in Scotland was wanting to put a climbing wall up, they would inevitably go down to the BMC, usually, because they had a bigger presence. They also had a climbing walls manual. and they talked to people down there about building a climbing wall in Scotland. There is nothing the BMC could do to help gain funding or get support or give support for a wall in Scotland. But they would discuss it anyway and not mention us.
Yeah.
So it was things like that.
Yeah, just little things.
Yeah, lots of tiny little stuff like that. Anyway, it got to the point where I was just getting so frustrated. I was going down there representing Mountaineering Council of Scotland. There was very little coming back the other way. You know, I sat on loads of their committees, their Access Conservation Committee. I even sat on the Guidebook Committee for a while, and various others. And to be honest, I mean, BMC did actually help fund our access post.
Yeah.
You know, they gave a little bit of money towards it because they recognised climbers come to Scotland from England. But bureaucracy, you know, within that sort of machine, there was very little two-way, and especially nothing from them. So I thought we needed a group that could take an overview and look at all things that were international and cross-border. And we would discuss these things before anybody did anything and agree how we're going to deal with it. And we thought, right, to do this properly, we needed to have MI in, Mountaineering Ireland, and all the mountain training boards. So we took this to the BMC and they were not happy. They didn't really want to do it. We pushed and pushed and pushed until finally they agreed. And we started having these meetings, and we agreed we'd have them at each of our AGMs. So it'd be 3 a year of the NGBs. So the Irish said their AGM is boring, but they have a gathering, usually in October, September, October, which is a real hoot. So it's best to come down to that. And it took a while to get established. And I really think the BMC were just sort of ticking a box. They really initially were not interested. But gradually, I think we worked on them and probably wore them down. We started getting reports about UIA, what they were discussing, and they'd discuss it with us, and then we'd feed back with them.
Right.
So it started on that. It was really good. Competitions and GB level, we started talking about those. If there are any issues to do with safety or access, then we could jointly talk about them. Which was good. Shall we say that each of the different NGBs, the bodies, meetings, had a different vibe. We were having our AGMs up at Glenmore Lodge at the time. And so it was a weekend and it was a festival time and there was tons of things going on. So it was a good laugh. Usually had, you know, a talk or a lecture in the evenings on a Saturday, and there were slideshows and they were drinking in the pub after, and then stuff on the hill and all sorts of things going on. And then we were going out to Ireland, which was brilliant from my point of view because spread over a span of, 9 years maybe, going to these. I had 9 years of going to Ireland, to different parts of Ireland, all organised by MMI, and having local climbers take us out to their local new climbing areas. Stuff that wasn't even in guidebooks. And we were doing new routes. They'd point us at new routes. They're never recorded. They said, that hasn't been done, do that. Oh, okay. So, I mean, from Donegal and Fairhead right down to Cork, you know, absolutely brilliant. Really enjoyed it.
Nice.
And the meetings on the Sunday were the MCG meetings. So we'd end up going and doing, I'd spent some time in the Irish meets, doing new boulder problems all over, and climbing new routes with Bob Reed, and it was brilliant fun. But there was one interesting one. Now the BMC, they're responsible for England and Wales. So there is a Welsh committee of the BMC, and a friend of mine from when I lived in Wales called Caradoc Jones, I think he was chairing that committee at the time, and he and I were talking about how they could set up their own NGB, separate one to BMC in Wales.
Right.
So he was putting a proposal together, and he was talking about how we did it and stuff, and he was looking into the finances of it, and he wanted to go to the Welsh Assembly to see if they could get some money to do it and all this sort of thing. Anyway, we were down in Ireland, and he was going to present this paper, and we're way down south near Cork somewhere, and it was a particularly interesting weekend. The Ceilidh started at about 11 o'clock after we'd, been out on the hill, climbing or whatever. And it finished about 4:30 in the morning, maybe it's 5 o'clock. And we were spread out in different places, like in B&Bs or whatever, and away from where the pub was, where the venue was. And there were two lasses that we got to know that night. We're dancing with them all night. The Cork girls. I met them years later as well. They were amazing, really good climbers as well. Anyway, we thought, well, we'll walk you home, because they were in the youth hostel. So we hadn't realised it was miles away from where we were staying. So we walked them there. Hang on a minute, where are we? We had no maps or anything. So we dropped them off at the youth hostel. We had to climb in to get in and break in because the doors were locked. And they told us which way to go to get back. By the time we got back, we were knackered, 6 in the morning or something. I went to bed. I remember sharing a room with John Donoghue, the president at the time. And I came in, just collapsed. Next thing I know, I'm awake. It's like, oh, God. And John's like, the MCG meeting's on. So John gets ready, goes down to the MCG meeting, and I'm there just utterly drunk. Really, really tired. Physically tired, because I'd been dancing like for, God knows, 5 hours or something. Yeah. And it's like, oh God, I can't do this. I wonder how Caradoc's nickname's Crag.
Yeah.
I wonder how Crag's doing. Anyway, I got up, had a shower quickly, got myself sorted, quick coffee, and went down to the meeting. And I got in there, and Crag's not there. So I sat down, and then he comes in, and he looked dreadful. I at least looked presentable. Crag looked dreadful. And the first thing on the agenda was his paper.
Oh, no.
Anyway, he did his best.
Yeah.
But yeah, he struggled a bit.
Yeah. And so we don't have a Welsh governing body.
Yeah. Don't blame it all on Crag, though.
Poor lad.
Yeah. I mean, another MCG meeting I went to, which was down at the BMCs. And this actually, I think, gets to the point where the MCG started to fold a wee bit.
Right.
But the BMC were looking at putting a museum of British mountaineering together.
Right.
And their president was putting it forward at the AGM. And we were there as reps from Mountaineering Scotland. And they were going to put it in this place in the Lake District, which was essentially a motorway service station. I thought, really? Do we want the museum experiment, showing what a great thing mountaineering is in a motorway service station? Nobody seemed to be asking this question. So I stood up and said, oh man, daggers. People were not happy. I could tell that I'd even mentioned the idea.
Yeah.
That we should find somewhere else. Anyway, it went ahead years later, and it cost the BMC a fortune, and then folded, which I wasn't surprised by, really. And then thereafter, I think the MCG just stopped being a major force, and there was a change in Mountaineering Scotland as well. And I think changing the CEO down at BMC, and it frittered away. It's another thing I think is really important and we should resurrect.
Yeah.
But there has to be will on all sides to do that.
Yeah. And was it kind of after that then that the Sports Development Committee and the Climbing Advisory Group came into being?
Well, yeah, I guess in many respects, because one of the things that MCG I was pushing with the MCG was coaching and climbing.
Yes.
I trained really badly back in the 80s, 70s and 80s. We all did. Everybody from Northumbrian has got tennis elbow, shoulder problems and joint problems because we just trained like idiots. And it wasn't until years later I realized, we were doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd done my ML, but I'd been involved in, the development of all of the other award schemes at MT. And I knew the syllabus was backwards. I used to be the rep on the MTS. And I just felt that the thing missing was coaching.
Yes.
Instructing, absolute, world class, brilliant. But they didn't do coaching. And Roger Wilde and I, because Roger's an MIC and a guide, and he agreed with me. He said, yeah, look at the syllabus. It's not there. Yeah. There's all this stuff missing, which we're not doing. Guys out there might well be doing it, but we're not training anybody and having a qualification in it. Yeah. So Roger and I put a proposal together, which we took to the MCG. And BMC wanted nothing to do with it. They felt there was nobody wanted it. People out there in the in mountain training and in all of that sphere, in the professional sphere, didn't want it. But then Brian Griffiths, who I think was vice president of the BMC at the time, his daughter was our contact with Sport Scotland many years later.
Right.
Brian,
Megan?
Yeah.
Oh,
Megan,
really?
Megan,
Cool.
Yeah. Small world.
Yeah.
So Megan, Brian thought, right, I'll bring everybody together and see. So he got the reps from the guides, Mountain Training England, Ireland, MI, Scotland, Wales, all your whole works, and ourselves. And we had a meeting. I remember it was Plassie Brennan, I think. And it kind of went round and round in circles, and everybody said they all do coaching. I was the only one there saying, no, you don't. They didn't go anywhere. So Roger and I got MCG meetings, kept pressurizing them, saying, we need to do this. Yeah. We've got to do this. And I think because the MCG didn't want to take it up, and it was beginning to falter, the MCG was disappearing a bit, then we needed some other way of doing stuff. And that's when I thought we set up something to do with coaching and climbing and all that element of it. So we set up that other group. So the Sports Development Group, the SDG, around about 2000. Vice President Fred Belcher chaired it. He was the main one. I was the note taker and the active person. Yeah. And the remit was facilities, international comps. Coaching was high on it, and expedition grants as well. But that kind of morphed into the climbing advisory group.
Oh, right, okay. So I thought they were two totally separate things that kind of evolved into...
One followed the other, basically,
right.
Yeah. I mean, mainly because we needed to expand the knowledge in the group. That's where your dad came in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he sat on it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, and this is the other thing. Graham Morrison, who was responsible for getting all the para stuff sorted. Graham was a board member by then. He'd moved from being on one of the committees to being a board member. And he was the board member on this new group. And Simon Tate was on because he at the time was the area youth coordinator for the competitions in Scotland. Yes. Scott Muir was on because he was doing RealRock and he'd been involved in lots of other things for us. Rory, your dad, was on because he was doing the comps. And the remit was pretty much the same: climbing walls, competitions, coaching, and just developing the whole thing. I think it worked really well for the period that it was doing stuff. But we had a change of committees and everything and structure, massive internal structural change with a new chief officer.
Yeah.
And this became disbanded not long after.
But I mean, was it not out of this while it was there that at least the start of coaching development happened? This was the kickstarter to it all.
Yeah. From our point of view, it was because we had people on there who were pretty dedicated, and knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And we needed to sort of push the whole thing forward. And MCG had faltered. We weren't getting anywhere through there to do anything. BMC had already started doing some fundamentals with Dave Binney.
Yeah.
In fact, he came up and did one at Rathore, which I attended. It was the first one that happened in Scotland. But when you're hitting your head against a brick wall, and then to get something done, and then you discover that BMC are starting to look at it when they said there's no need for anything, it was a bit sort of hypocritical. So, and setting up this group, which sort of morphed into the second one, the idea was that we'd bring a whole load of people together and we could start doing our own thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, very conscious that we needed to have a discussion with it.
Linked up thinking somewhere.
Yeah. So the committee the group still did loads of things like RealRock and everything. Yeah. Your dad delivered RealRock for us. We had loads of people delivering RealRock. Dave Verdi. Yeah, so coaching. So Dave Binney was doing this for BMC down in England. We saw what was happening. I'd been plugging away trying to get our proposal to be accepted and at least looked at, discussed, but they didn't even want to discuss it. Roger and I agreed to a proposal where we would just keep the instructional awards exactly as they are, but then parallel with them would be the coaching awards, which meant that you could say, if you look at them in the hierarchy, you got SPA as it was in the old days, right up to guide. And then for the coaching, you've got level 1 coaching up to level 5 coaching, which is what most other sports were doing at the time. If you married them exactly, so you had to become a guide to do level 5 coaching, that meant that, level 5 coaching is competitions. Would a guide do that?
Not a chance.
And would it vice versa? Yeah. It wouldn't work. So the thing was to pick and mix. So the instructional one gave you everything you needed for instructing and guiding, plus where you could deliver it. Whereas the coaching gave you all the coaching pedagogy, and how to coach and how to deal with people's different methods of learning, and then all the physical training elements to it and all the nutritional elements, psychological elements of climbing really necky routes and doing competition, all of that. And you could just mix and match. If you wanted to be a guide and you wanted to do psychological training for doing big mountain routes or, multi-pitch rock routes, then you could go and get your level 5.
Yeah.
If you wanted to just do it indoors in competitions, you do your level 5 and you get your indoor climbing wall award.
Yeah.
It married really well.
It makes more sense.
Yeah,
way more sense.
Absolutely. So we've been pushing and pushing at this. BMC had actually brought out a coaching manual. It's in the office somewhere. Anyway, I decided, right, I'm going to push this forward a bit. So I approached University of Stirling because we had a thing through with Scottish Environmental Link again. They had links with all the universities and all the research departments. And you could put in a request to link for whatever you wanted to research. And we did a few different ones with them. Right. So I put in a request and I wanted somebody at in a university in the sports science department to look at coaching and climbing. And I got a thing back from Stirling University. And I got this guy who did a postgrad. So we took him on. I was like his lead. And And he went off, and I would tell him, guide him around what he was wanting to do, where to go. He looked at the French system of coaching, looked at the USA coaching system in climbing, their whole systems, how they worked, what they did, and produced a report. And I plunked the report out to the BMC. How about this? We could do something here. Anyway, it wasn't really going anywhere. But fundamentals was being developed by the BMC. And we weren't involved. So I kind of forced myself on them to get involved. So the first one I had any influence on and actually met up with the people down in England who were developing them was Funders 2. Funders 1, Dave Binney had been running for quite a while. So I met up with Dave Binney and Ian Dunn and some various other people. Catherine Schreiermacher, she was pivotal in it. And we started working together to develop Funders 2. And those meetings grew because the BMC, I think, saw the requirement for it. And Graham Morrison, the board member, started being involved in the development of it as well into Funders 3. And then the turning point, I think, was that UK Sport were looking at how their grant funding is given and for what. And they changed some of the criteria. You had to prove you really were coaching. And if you couldn't meet their criteria, you wouldn't get the money. And that was the turning point. And I think BMC and Mountain Training realised that actually they needed to engage with us. And that's when it started. The whole series of things started in developing the coaching syllabuses with Mountain Training UK. At that point, that was taken away from me. That was fine. That was off to MT. They were going to deliver it anyway. But I and Graham, we both did an awful lot with Funders 3, revisiting Funders 2 and 1, altering them. And that's where we got involved. It was brilliant. Going down to meetings down in a climbing wall in Manchester with all the other guys from all over the place and discussing, movement stuff with wide boys.
Oh yeah, cool.
It was Tom and loads of other folk who were really good, top of their game in climbing. And it was brilliant. It was really good. Very informative.
Very cool that you guys were part of the first push, and regardless of what went on in the middle there, who was doing what or whatever, that first push has brought us to where we are now with the coaching industry. It's very cool. You probably have people down south say that we didn't really do an awful lot to push this forward. There were other things, but I think we were. I think the way we went about it and the way we were targeting them and pushing for them to get it established was what did it in the end. And as soon as MT UK and BMC had to set up they called it UK Climbing called it a source group. We set up this massive group to then talk about the whole thing. The people from BMC, Mountain Training Boards, MI, Wales, Ireland, MT, MTS, ourselves. So we'd have these meetings to discuss what coaching was. And I wanted somebody there who was independent. And I got them to agree to approach Neil Gresham, because Neil was a coach and he was delivering coaching stuff. And I talked a lot about all of this, and it was hard work, these meetings, and we were the only ones bringing papers to the table. I got funding from Mountaineering Scotland to pay for Scott Muir to investigate exactly what was in the syllabus for Mountain Training Award schemes. I got Dave McLeod to talk about exactly what was required for coaching
and how it was different.
Yeah.
And when we presented the two and said, there you go, that's mountain instructing, that's coaching. They're totally different.
Yeah.
And they kept coming into this middle ground saying, but everything is coaching. I said, well, yeah, if you take coaching as a term, as a heading, yeah, everything is coaching. It's got an element of it.
Yeah.
And then we got into the discussion about what's coaching and teaching and then instructing. What's the difference between, oh man, it went on for 2 years. Anyway, the report came out. And, the report came out from MT UK, and it gave various options. And they chose the option that we originally put forward in the first place.
Yeah. Like I said, look what it's grown into.
Yeah.
From those first conversations, you guys pushing, regardless of who took it on or did what on that journey, look what it's grown into. Yeah.
No, I'm really pleased with that.
But it's not just facilities then that you've helped bring to the scene, but pretty much all of the events that Mountaineering Scotland have been involved in indoor climbing in these facilities. So like everything that we do within the facilities that you've helped develop, you've also helped bring to the scene as well. So let's start with the equality and paraclimbing element of this. Okay. I think let's start with that one.
Yeah. Bittersweet because it's kind of faltered recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been running competitions for quite a few years, and the BMC had set up the GB para team.
Yeah.
So we felt we needed to do something. And the only experience I'd had in the past was many years ago. Our administrator, Lorraine Nicholson, when she packed in with us and went on and did other things, she did a degree in art, fine art and stuff, and did other work. She volunteered with various different groups, including doing things for the blind associations.
Yeah.
And she set up something at Glenmore Lodge. I didn't have a hand in it actually initially. She was the one who, went to the lodge and said, could you do these sort of 3-day, 4-day sessions for visually impaired people, walking, climbing, canoeing, a whole load of stuff, staying in a bothy for the night, stuff like this. And because we still kept in touch and knew each other really well, so you could try and help us with this. So we did. We got involved with it, and it was brilliant. It lasted 10 years, I think. Wow. And a lot of people went through it. And I think it was I think it was groundbreaking actually at the time. It was brilliant. And even when Lorraine stood back from sort of managing and administering it, one of the original visually impaired walkers took over and was doing it, which was brilliant. It was really good. So that was the experience I had. Plus, in my life back in the day at Newcastle Local Authority, I did all sorts of stuff with visually impaired people. A lot of different groups out on bikes, tandems, obviously, which was great fun. We even did a little bit of mountain biking downhill with them as well. But when we got to the point where the BMC were developing the GB climbing, and Graham Morrison, who's a disabled athlete himself, he's an MIA, ex-police officer, had an accident. He was a traffic cop on a motorbike, and he had a crash, and he can't tell when he walks, but he's got very little movement on one of his legs. He got onto our committee and then onto our board, and he was like, we need to do more for paraclimbers. So he was a motivating force, and together we sat down and worked out what we were going to do, and we looked at what the BMC were doing, and it was great. It was, but it was at top end.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of research, and Graham was very keen on making sure that it was accessible for everybody. So he said, right, we're going to do it as a festival. So we went to Rathall, to ESCA, and said, look, can you help us with this? And this is what we're going to run. We're going to do all sorts of access stuff for all kinds of different disabilities. We're going to do a fun bouldering comp, and we'll do a GB level competition as well. Yeah. And that's how it happened. We set it up. But, it was hard. Yeah. Nobody knew how to set the routes for the different disabilities. Because there was only like 30 people, potentially, possibly 40 at the most, coming along to the actual comp. To set the routes that you needed for that, you're never going to make any money on this. This had to be funded.
It does cost thousands of pounds for the routes.
Yeah. And who did we have who could do it? We didn't have anybody. So Graham and I set up a training thing based around one of the events. I think it was the first event, actually. So we looked at the route setters from different walls, got in touch with them and said, do you want to learn how to route set for paraclimbing? And we got them all along to Rathall, and we had a weekend, and we had Friday night talking, discussing ideas. We had a guy from the BMC came along. He was one of the volunteers for them, and he gave us a lot of information. He was really good as well. Loads of advice about how to set for different disabilities, for limb amputees, upper arm, leg, whatever. So we trained the guys up, got them to set the routes, and then we had the comp and the festival the following day. And we need to do that again.
Yeah.
We've only done it once, and we really need to do it again. Yeah. But I was quite proud of that. Yeah. And that was Graham and I working together. And
it just having that part brought paraclimbing a bit more onto the scene, where there's elements in the facility strategy where you require certain things for paraclimbing groups. Now we've got paraclimbing training run by Able to Adventure to help more instructors know how to run sessions for different groups of disabilities. I think just starting that had a ripple effect out the rest of the industry.
That was the idea. I mean, it's why we looked at getting as many setters from as many different walls as we could to do the training, because we wanted them to go back to their walls and try and set stuff up. Yeah. And that was the idea.
So you mentioned, as part of the Climbing Advisory Group, all these names that were involved in certain things, and competitions were quite a large part of that, and you had lots of people involved in that. How did the competition side begin?
Well, BMC started them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the kids there were adult competitions going on ad hoc. I think the BMC had run some World Cups as well. Very fledgling stuff.
Yeah.
And they did them all indoors in Birmingham and Manchester, whatever. Big events, cost a lot of money. And then they set up the BRICS. You remember that?
I remember the BRICS well.
British Regional Youth Climbing Competitions. Or Climbing Series.
Climbing Series.
Yeah. And they ran them in Scotland. And they did the whole thing. But we realised actually there was a big thing missing. We weren't involved in any way at all. Yeah. And yet we could have helped a lot. And in discussions, I think it might have been at the Mountaineering Coordination Group, actually, we raised the point that, we could actually develop these more, because they were only doing them in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
They weren't, I don't think any of the comps were done in very many other places. I think they did occasional ones in Inverness.
Yeah.
And that was about it, I think. Yeah. We said, look, if we take on the management of BRICS in Scotland, we'll advertise it, we'll market it, we'll start getting more volunteers involved in the belaying and the judging and everything, because we're here, rather than you down in Manchester struggling to do it up here.
Yeah.
They agreed, so we took over.
Oh, cool.
And then bit by bit, we took on more role. And then we got a name change and we took on fully. And honestly, my role in it was pretty small. I was just sort of in the background doing admin and arguing the case for us taking it on. But you had people like, Avril Gall. Yeah. She completely designed a completely new spreadsheet system for doing all of this, the scoring and doing all of the stuff to do with, the scorecards. And I mean, she was just a demon at it.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have done it without her. And then all the volunteers who came in as AYCs initially they were called, but we changed the name. The competition coordinators.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was them who pushed it.
Yeah.
And then once it got it going, there was the issue of, well, actually, it's taken up a lot of time. So we franchised it out. And I think it initially went out to Neil McGeehee. First AYC that I was involved with was Natalie Berry's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how he ended up being the AYC. I have no idea.
Because he was at all of the competitions.
Yeah.
Like, he was at all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever missed one of the domestic comps.
Yeah. Then Simon Tate, who was working at Ratho at the time. Who else came on? Your dad.
Dad. Yeah.
Yeah. He did a lot for us.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. John Donaldson came on board from the north. And then, of course, we had Scott Forsyth, who's just done them ever since.
Yeah.
And
he just took it and ran with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hell. And your family's been intimately involved. Anthea, your mum's been involved with them in a few years. So, and John Donaldson, it wasn't just John.
No, it was Scott and Elaine. Yeah.
They're a family enterprise.
We were like always quite good at bringing families into it. Like the kids would compete, but the parents would be involved in some way. And it's always been quite good like that.
It has, yeah. And even Avril, I mean,
The only reason Avril was involved, Rachel was involved.
Yeah. And her dad got involved as our photographer and he's been doing it ever since. It's amazing. Yeah. So, yeah. But it was just a matter of then, we franchised out the management of it, but I was still trying to develop the competitions. So I was involved in the policy element of it, the development, bringing in the paracomps, setting up the bouldering, the national bouldering, national lead comps.
The SMBL, and then we had the SYCCs, the SYBCs, and then the Scottish schools, Jeans and St. Al's and that kick-started that. But
GCC and Al, St. Al's. And Jeans was very involved. And they ran it for a while. We supported it and gave prizes and stuff. And I think in the end, Rob Watts said to me, look, would you mind taking over the admin? Because it's just a lot of admin. Why do you think we want to do it? But yeah, we did.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's the same deal with the coaching stuff. Like, from that first little, like, we can run this conversation. Look at what we've managed to develop. Look what you've managed to develop.
I know, but you and Callum putting together the fun bouldering thing now.
Honestly, I am not taking any credit for that whatsoever. That was entirely all Callum.
Oh, well.
I have to hand it to him.
Yeah, I do respect them.
Yeah, that was all him.
And if the very first one, how many kids took part? It was amazing.
Yeah, like we had 270 or something on its pilot. Yeah. As a pilot, 200, that's incredible.
The pilot of the roped one at GCC, I think, 30 people?
Yeah.
And it was mainly private schools.
Yeah.
Because they were the only ones who could afford to transport the kids to the wall. Yeah.
The competition scene that's grown from that early days is really cool. Like, whatever you think of competitions, whether you're out there and you like them or you don't like them, it doesn't matter. You've got to be impressed at what's been accomplished here. That Cox pathway and Snibble.
You know what that was based on? think it might have been before I was actually in post, or just about the same time. Neil Morrison from up north and a few of the other guys from the northeast set up a bouldering series, and they got funding help for it to help pay for them to do the route setting, and some prizes, and it was called the Van Gogh bouldering competition or something. Can't remember anyway. And they ran it for ages, but it was a lot of work, and they're working full time as well, So it lasted a good few years, and then it folded, and then years later, like decades later, I'm thinking that'd be really good to set up again. How could we set that up in some way? So I sat thinking about it. I talked to a few folk about it, and then I came up with the SNBL, the Scottish National Bouldering League, and then put it together. Yeah. So that's where it started. Yeah.
But then there was also the STS.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Tooling series.
Yeah. I had nothing to do with that.
I thought you did have a hand in that somewhere. Not in kicking it off, obviously, but
we supported it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
The guys were all doing it voluntary.
Yeah.
And they made a festival out of it. It was brilliant. So it was a full weekend of stuff going on. But I think it just got harder and harder to get sponsorship. And to administer it and everything. It was really successful. I mean, I used to go along to them, and they were brilliant. Really good.
I competed in it.
Yeah? Oh, I didn't realise.
Loads and loads of them.
Oh, wow.
You don't know that?
I must have seen you there then. How did I not recognise?
I don't know. I remember
good one.
The best ones were Scott Muir's ones.
Oh, God.
In the Wall in Aviemore.
Yeah.
That was wild. Absolutely wild.
Probably unsafe.
There was some antics going on for sure. It was the first STS that I won was the debut of the wall when Scott opened the place.
The roof.
Yeah, but it was the day that Bill Davidson ripped a hole in the boulder wall. He'd got this like big Stein pull on the roof in the boulder wall, and he's pulled on it, and the whole panels come off the wall.
Good one.
Yeah, no, they were great. Yeah. They were great. I used to love the tooling comps, man.
Yeah. We tried to keep it going, and we thought we'd do it through administering it through us. So you would book on. Whereas before, they never had a booking system. You just sort of turned up and paid your money on the day. We couldn't organise it like that. We just, the realities of spending a lot of time on it, we needed people to book on.
Yeah.
So when they said, go and try it, and nobody booked on. And that was the end of it. And I think that's a real pity. Yeah. And I tried to resurrect it through the British Tooling Series started up as a result of that.
Yeah.
And I've tried to get it going again with various people. Yeah. And the Ice Factor.
Well, now we've got the Scottish Dry Tooling Club, and it's getting really popular. I think now's the time to look at kickstarting that again properly. Yeah, I think they're in a really, really good position to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think so. And the Ice Factor, was closed just very recently.
Oh, there's another facility you helped out.
Yeah.
Jeez, the list goes on.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about
that. Yeah. Right, let's take this outdoors.
All right.
So we mentioned RealRocks.
Yeah.
We mentioned RealRocks. How did the RealRock thing start? When did that start? What was the kind of ethos behind that? Because it's grown into, through its evolution, it's been many different beasts, the RealRock program.
Yeah. I've always thought there was a massive gap. We had kids coming into the competitions in the bricks back in the day, and the fledgling YCS. If they wanted to get into outdoor climbing, where would they go? The only place really was a club. And through my club contacts, and that was part of my work, developing clubs back then, before you guys started doing it, through Climb Scotland. None of our clubs wanted anything to do with kids except their own. Yeah. They weren't going to take in somebody else's kid and take them off climbing and, up the Ben or whatever. So there was a huge gap. And it kind of came to a head because there was a young climber from Aberdeen who was really, really good and wanted to go do outdoor climbing. And I remember her mum contacting me saying, we've employed a mountain guide to take her out climbing and show her outdoor climbing. But it's so expensive, like, 250 quid a day or something. She says, we just can't do it. Is there anywhere we can go? I approached the local clubs. They didn't want to know. I just thought, we've got to do something. Yeah. Then Scott Muir comes along. So give Scott due credit for some of this. Yeah. So we sat down, we were having a chat, and he said, why don't we do a RealRock? He says, he was working towards these MIA. He says, I've got to get experience. If I do things through the national governing body, you sort out all the admin, you sort out all the risk assessments, you do the assessment of what we're doing, and sign it off. And we'll introduce some of these kids to RealRock. So that was 1999, 98, 99. Yeah, something like that. So I put it forward to the board, and at the time, Allah had been set up. Yeah. And I knew we'd been given exemption from Allah, because we're a national governing body, and our clubs are exempt from Allah. But our board, the executive committee, wanted to make sure. So I contacted Allah in Scotland and said, look, this is what we're doing. Sent them all the details. I sent them examples of the risk assessments, how we were doing the whole thing. And they went, yeah, fine.
Easy as that.
Yeah. You're outside the realms of the legislation anyway. You're exempt. So, but yeah, it's great to know that you're actually doing it well. So I set it up with Scott. So Scott was doing the first stuff. And I do remember going to one crag with him and said, right, come on then, show me exactly what you're doing. And he walked us through from how we get there, where we park up, what the risk assessment is, getting the kids there, how we risk assess and how we take them to the crag, what we do with them, and the whole day and how we get them back. The whole thing. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And it might seem really weird because I'm not an MIA, I'm not an MIC, I'm not a guide. I don't have any qualifications except a really lowly mountain leader. But when I worked for Newcastle LEA, I ended up getting a contract with them to write syllabuses for all of their outdoor activities. And I did tons of research and my own experience. And I wrote everything they needed to know about climbing. I did tons of syllabuses from starting and how you operate a top rope system, how you do bouldering, right up to learning to lead. And this is way before Mountain Training had ever done it. So I'd done quite a lot. And that was all signed off by the local authority, and I was teaching, I was teaching the instructors how to do it, for a couple of years. So I got a pretty good idea. So I was happy to sign off on stuff like this. And then so Scott was initially involved, so that was good. We then got Andy Munro. Andy was involved. He did quite a few of them.
I didn't know Andy was involved.
Yeah, he did quite a few around here. At Tullymet and Bennybeg and stuff. Davy Verdi, who I think is now mountain instructor. Yeah, I think he did go. He did quite a few for us. Stephen Barnes, you may have, you just remember him. Your dad. This is ridiculous. Your dad's involved everywhere.
Yeah. He was definitely. He got about a little bit.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah. Malcolm Matheson, who was actually on our executive committee later on, I think. Yeah. John Orr. Johannes Felter.
Johannes, yeah.
John Donaldson did some for us as well. And there were others. I mean,
Geek did loads as well.
Geek did loads, yeah. In fact, I mean, it went beyond just, and this is one of the things I really thought we cracked, which were really good. They were excellent. I actually delivered a load as well. I would go around all of them taking photographs anyway and help out and deliver some. But, we were just doing it by local crags. And I thought, well, we've got to do more than this, And Scott was, we've got to go abroad. Why don't we do stuff abroad? And McGeek was like, yeah. I think we'd made McGeek our national coach at the time.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Just gave it the title. He was more than qualified.
Yeah.
And he's like, right, okay. So where can we go? So I just let the guys get off and have a look and see. And we ended up doing trips to the camps, full week camps.
Yeah.
Parents would go with them. The coaches would meet the parents out there. The coaches would have them from, say, 10 till 4. And they were responsible for the kids in that period. We'd have parents staying with us. They would have to be around. But some of them could go off and do stuff. And the parents were responsible for all the rest of the time. And we went to France, Spain, Kalymnos, Fontainebleau. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to go along. I really would have liked to.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, I look back on those and you look at we did reports of those in that E-Active I was talking about earlier. They're all in there. They were amazing. And the guys delivering were brilliant.
Yeah. And they went on for quite a while because it started with that crew, but you had Robbie Phillips. Robbie Phillips, who came up through the RealRock program. He was working with Johannes at the start. And then he ended up taking some of I think he was at the Spain RealRocks.
He did a Spain RealRock and he did Kalymnos.
Yeah.
He also, at that point, we took him on as our elite coach. Mm-hmm. And he was delivering coaching sessions to various kids in different parts of the country. And his little sessions were like, how to prepare for a competition at national level and psychology and all this sort of stuff. It was really good. And he did all sorts of things for us for several years.
Yeah. The RealRock program is, I don't know, I think that's the thing that I don't want to say you should be most proud of because you've done a lot of stuff. You've done a lot of cool stuff, but that makes a big difference. Like that has been huge, And like I said, it's evolved. It's evolved lots, and it's been many different beasts, and it's done some really, really cool things throughout the years, like the international stuff. And obviously we're not doing the international stuff at the moment. Maybe sometime in the future, but I think what we're running just now is super, super cool. And that gap in the market that you saw back then still exists now.
Yeah, it does.
So that program is as relevant now, if not more than it was back then, So you guys starting that, or you starting that, and you and Scott starting that is, man, that's something to be mega proud of.
Yeah, I'm really chuffed with that, I have to admit. I think Scott would be as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It faltered at some one point because it wasn't the board. I think our CEO decided that we had to conform and get qualified instructors to deliver, which meant we had to pay them.
Yeah.
And as soon as we did that, we're back to square one.
Yeah.
We're in a situation which had stopped things in the past. So bringing it in-house and having members of staff do it at the really good cost, so people could afford it. Because you can't just take somebody out and do a single day. Yeah. You've got to work on them over several days.
Show them the next steps.
Yeah.
It's a journey.
It is,
That's the way we run our RealRocks now is not like we're coming out and giving you an experience. We're taking you on parts of your journey here. Yeah. And we actually worked out the other day how much just running it in-house subsidies it by compared to if we were using external instructors paying like standard rates, how much we are running it for and how much that subsidy is. And it's 75%.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And like that makes a huge difference because I don't think 99% of the kids that we get coming through RealRocks, since the days that you started it up till now, 99% of them would never have had access to outdoor climbing. if that didn't happen.
And look at what some of them have gone on to do.
Right? Yeah.
I mean, incredible.
Like some of the biggest names we've got in Scottish climbing have come out of, yes, the competition scene, but got into outdoor stuff through the RealRock program. Robbie Phillips, Becca Drummond, Greg Boswell, you know, all of this crew, myself, yeah, all of that crew started through comps and RealRock. Yeah.
And I think we never did a follow-up years later to see how many are still actively climbing. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're not climbing at the top end.
No.
It's if they're climbing and they've got the lifestyle and they're out there doing stuff it's really important.
That's the thing that I think has been the most important part of having you part of Mountaineering Scotland for, was it 35 years now?
Oh, don't say that.
I know.
No, it can't be. Well, 89.
35 years, buddy. Is you've always had that vision of it's about the grassroots side, and it's not been about focusing on one thing or the other. And even with all your work through the competitions and the coaching side, it's never been about the elite side. It's about giving people that lifelong appreciation and passion for the sport. Whatever their thing in the sport is, it makes no difference as long as they do it for life. And through all of the work that you've done with us, that's what you've tried to instill. And it would be really amazing to go back through our membership from since 1989 and see how many people have brought that forward and are still climbing for their lives.
It'd be interesting, yeah.
I think it'd be really interesting. And I think what you'd find is there's a lot of the people that are the biggest names in Scottish climbing right now have benefited and have come out of what you've done.
Yeah, well, hope so. Be good.
But like, I'm sitting here, myself included in that, personally, thank you for all of the work you've done, because that's brought me my entire life.
Oh, I just thought you were a pain all the time.
Well, I am, but I'm a grateful pain.
But I mean, on the basis of that, right, a good example, I suppose, is the expedition grants.
Yeah.
I mean, the BMC set the expedition grants up many years ago, and it's the Mount Everest Foundation as well. You can get loads of money, thousands of pounds, to go on a trip out to the Himalaya and do some big ploddy hill. No, I'm belittling it a bit. I could never get up one. That's why I'm belittling it. And I was part of the committee, and still am, actually. I'm still on the BMC Expedition Committee. But I got to realise that actually, this is not what it's all about. Yeah. The same names were coming through, all the big names. They were getting this money. Okay, they weren't getting masses. Many of them didn't need the money, and it was just to get that sort of connection with the BMC. And I managed to push Sport Scotland into giving us a grant for our own. Yeah. And it was only a small amount of money. It wasn't much, like £10,000 or something. But it was additional to what you could get if you went to BMC. Yeah. And we liaised really well. And Nick Colton at the BMC, he and I would talk to each other about the applications and work out the best way of divvying the money up. And it worked really well. But I thought, that's not enough. These expeditions, I'm hand-tied to what the BMC's criteria are. So I completely rewrote it, changed it into a bursary. I called it a bursary. And you could get money, get a grant, a little bit of a grant, for any kind of climbing discipline anywhere in the world, including here, as long as it was personal development. And if you look at what we did, I would love to be able to have like 20 grand. So that next step of RealRock is then, right, how do we help people, those kids who've gone through RealRock and have got really quite good or want to get better and do bigger alternative stuff? How do we help them make that next step? Yeah. And we gave people money to go and do all sorts of things. I had to set it up properly. I had to have a bursary committee to look at it. But then when you look at the people that we gave money for and the range of different things, it was alpine climbing, winter climbing in Lofoten, climbing in this country in winter, going abroad anywhere, bouldering. You know, it was like all over the place. And you look at the names involved. I've got to read them out. You?
Me?
What did you do again? I can't remember.
You gave me money to go to some of the comps.
Oh, that's right.
Like,
yeah, the international comps.
Yeah, you helped fund me to go to my first World Cup.
Yeah, that's right. Alan Cassidy got stuff. Stephen and Nikki Addison, who were competitors as well. I think Stephen got it for going to international ice climb.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Rachel Carr, going to comps. Ross Kirkland got stuff. Robbie Phillips got things. He did that alpine thing, the 3 big rock walls in the Alps. He got money for that, and various other things. Paul Schweizer, who's a lecturer at Edinburgh Uni, he used to climb in Yosemite, and as an old git, we gave him some money to go back and revisit and do some amazing stuff again.
Nice.
That was really good. Kev Shields, brilliant paraclimber in winter. Alec Reed, William Bosey, got grants from Ian Peter and Alan Fife, did an expedition together as a couple of old gits. Eleanor Hopkins, Johnny Stocking, they were from that same cohort of climbers in the comps at the time. Al Hillwood, he went to Afghanistan.
Was it his Afghanistan trip?
Yeah, the north of Afghanistan, while the rest of Afghanistan is at war. He went there and did some new, big new hills. Guy Robertson is the guy who he went to Morocco and did some new E5s and 6s down there on site, and he went to Lofoten and did some really hard winter routes. Dave McLeod for doing some really hard stuff in Spain, I think. Anna Wells did an amazing trip in the Alps. I mean, Bob Shepton. God, he's older than old gits. Bob Shepton went over to Greenland, sailed over there with a group of really hardcore European climbers.
Hang on, did we give Bob Shepton funding for the Dodo's Delight trip? Sean Villanueva was on that.
That's him. Yeah. So that was Bob.
The video of that trip is amazing. I can't. Right, we helped fund that. That's sick.
I mean, Tim Miller, Angus Davison, Cathy Aldred, Jimmy Andrews. There's a good one. The Gum Club girls went out there. That's brilliant. So the expeditions got money as well, but it was a whole range of things.
Yeah. So many people benefited from that.
Yeah. And I just think, I'd like to think in the years beyond, somebody taking over what I was doing, whether whoever it is, you get Callum, whatever, that you could build on that element of it and get these, RealRock out, European RealRocks together again and get the bursary up and running somehow. But you need to go to an independent financier or something, like a bank or a big company to get some money and make it work nowadays. Yeah. But it's at the heart of what I believe in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in the heart of what you believe in, let's end this off there with this question then. Yeah. Out of everything that we've talked about, and this is not an exhaustive list of all the things you've been involved in. This is just a few highlights, all the access conservation work, the safety work, the mountain safety work, the policy side, all of the millions of committees you seem to be involved in, the coaching development stuff, the competition development stuff, the outdoor stuff, the paraclimbing stuff, all of these things. What are you most proud of? What is the thing that's like that? If there's one thing I could say to someone that I did that.
In some respects, I'm really proud to have been right at the start and then right through virtually to the end of the access legislation. Yeah. From the letter you accord right through to it being enacted. That's amazing. Yeah. But I was just one person in a huge sort of group of people involved in that. thing that I'm probably most proud of that I put together has got to be all that series of RealRock, the things out going abroad, and the bursary.
Yeah.
That's got to be high up, really high on the list, and probably second, only just to that, is getting the coaching. I mean, anybody could do the stuff to do with walls design, and that's just all, admin stuff, getting grants for walls and things. And it's important, but it's good. But, I had to fight to get coaching accepted in this country, in the UK. So yeah, that's pretty high as well.
Yeah.
It's the people that I've met in doing the job right from the start. I mean, it's just, you met so many amazing people, who are, they just give so much of their time. And virtually nobody knows about them. I certainly, at the time they may do, but then 10 years later, everyone's kind of forgotten. But I met some amazing people going through this period. Everybody's read Bill Murray's books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read them before I became a national officer, but I never thought I'd meet him, and another person, one of our early presidents, well before I started, was Alex Small.
Yeah.
And I got to talk to Alex Small because he was in a care home in Crieff.
All right.
And he contacted me independently and had a chat with me.
Cool.
Before he died. Robin Campbell, absolute stalwart of Scottish mountaineering.
Yeah.
Incredible guy. And then there's the presidents that I was involved with, oh God, how many? Graham Little was the first one.
Yeah.
Bob Reed followed. Nick Kemp.
Yeah.
John Donohoe. John Mackenzie and Chris Townsend. I mean, names that everybody probably knows because they're still out there doing stuff,
Still out crushing.
Yeah, and they're really good. But then some of the vice presidents and secretaries don't get the recognition that they need. So, people like Bill Miles was an early one. Kate Ross. June Ross was vice president when I first started.
Right.
She passed away 9 years ago or something. But I mean, June really, really helped me. All through that period, she was fantastic. She was like a total stalwart and support for me. Absolutely amazing. And Nick Halls and John Leftley, the same.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick Halls, he saved my butt on numerous occasions. Told me what an idiot I was. Kept me online. It was really good. And then, you look at all the other people in the access legislation stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it's well before it started. Rennie McCohen. People may not know him. He was Stirling based. Rennie was a journalist, and he was already writing constantly about access and the need for legislation. And Alan Blackshaw I'd mentioned earlier. Bill Wright was access officer for a while at the BMC, and he's moved up here now and got on with him. Cameron McNeish, of course, been involved with Cameron, and also just Drennan Watson, Dick Balharry, and Adam Watson. Absolute amazing people.
Yeah.
And I got to know them through Environment Link and the access and legislation stuff. And I met Tom Weir, which I'm really chuffed at having met him before he passed away. He was on the Forestry Environmental Panel for Aberfoyle District Forest, and I was seconded to it as the Mountaineering Council of Scotland rep. And I got in there, I didn't know anybody. And there's Tom. So I went and sat next to him. And I don't know what, he was great. He was absolutely brilliant, but he just used to talk and chat all the time, all through any sort of lecture or thing. He was chatting away about things, It was brilliant. Really liked it.
Brilliant.
And also there were people at the BMC, the presidents and stuff that I really got on with. Still were in touch with them. I'm still in touch now. I mean, Chris Bonington was one of them.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people I met. A lot of greats as well.
Yeah.
And that's been part of the great thing about this job.
Nice. Thank you very much, buddy.
That's all right.
For not just for doing this with me, but for all of that work. For all of that work. From me and everyone in the community. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed it, and I wouldn't be doing it if I hadn't enjoyed it. Although it paid me nothing. I could have done with some more money. However, that aside, I've loved every minute of it.
Wow. Well, I want to say, on behalf of everyone who enjoys the outdoors in Scotland and climbing in any of its forms, thank you to Kevin for everything that he has done with us through his time at Mountaineering Scotland. We have all benefited greatly from his passion, and while he will hopefully be enjoying a climbing-filled retirement, he will be missed here at Mountaineering Scotland. If you want to know more about Kevin's personal climbing story, which is mega, by the way, check out episode 16 because he's been on before. But from all of us here, enjoy your retirement, bud. And do your buddy checks, eh?